Welcome back. Did you enjoy your lunch? I said, did you enjoy your lunch? All right, I know some of you didn't eat, you just sat in the...
Give it up for our MC, Ungayo Bilam. Keeping it funky and fresh all the time. He's so funky fresh, look at that. Come on, we love you, Ungayo, look at that. You're like a supermodel.
Blue steel. That's Alex Rogers, by the way. He put this whole thing together. Let's hear it for Alex. Let's hear it for the whole team of the ICBC. All right, we're international, man. We thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate all of you. Oh, hey, by the way, are y'all doing English or Spanish? English. This one will be in English. If you need a translating device, we have them over there by the coat check. Don't forget the party tonight, 9 o'clock at the Ritz-Arts Hotel. Also, discount tickets for Berliner Hotel. And please, please, I'm begging you, please, please, pretty please, go upstairs and check out some of the exhibitors up there as well, right? They get lonely. And there's more food up there than there is downstairs, so just trying to give you an incentive. Okay, we're going to discuss comparing medical cannabis regulations in Europe, and here to lead that discussion, the co-founder of SAE-FA Abogados. Let's hear it for Guillermo Fernandez Navarro.
Hello, hello. Mic's on. Just kidding. So, good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here one year more. Let's talk and enjoy talking about medical cannabis. We want to learn about how is the situation in different countries like Canadian, Portugal, Switzerland, and United States. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. So, let's start. First of all, I'm going to let my colleagues to introduce themselves. We can start, I think, from Alex, please.
All right, thank you. Really nice to be here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I've been in the medical cannabis space since 2013, working with many different companies over there over my time, and now I'm a partner in an edibles manufacturer called Lush Brands. We're sitting right over there, and Hybrid Farm. We're one of the first pharmacies in North America to have medical cannabis. And hot off the presses, we just launched a new trade association called the Global Cannabis Trade Association in Canada, helping facilitate international business. So very excited about that and excited to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Carlos, please.
Thank you very much to be here. I mean, the opportunity to be here with you all. My name is Carlos. I'm from Pangolin Solutions, one of the first consultancy company in the medical cannabis in Portugal. So we are helping the investors and the growers to build their project in terms of developing all the technical part and also following all the guidelines to get certification, also the license process. And we are doing this from since 2018. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much and enjoy the panel.
Thank you so much. Daniel?
I'm a lawyer in Switzerland, in life sciences, as well as in corporate law, specialized in cannabis as well. I'm the co-founder of the International Cannabis Bar Association Europe section, together with Caio sitting back there, and father of 3. That's also important, small hobby. And apart from that, very active with various companies in Switzerland in the cannabis space, also including with government and new legalization efforts that are taking place at the moment. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. Santiago.
Hello everyone, pleasure to be here again. My name's Santiago Ongai. I came to the cannabis industry in 2008 as a hobbyist, cultivator, and distributor. And I then entered the software traceability space once regulations started to be released and the need for traceability was apparent. So I've been working there for the past 8 years. And as of recently, I co-founded a mycology company in the psychedelic mushroom space. Here to talk about mainly the U.S. medical cannabis industry and the traceability within that. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Santi. And about myself, co-founder of SAF Abogados. We've been working in the cannabis industry for almost 15 years. We work in all the sectors, from criminal law to licensing, going through to cannabis clubs, so anything we can help, here we are. Let's start. First of all, I think we're going to start from Alex. Briefly, please, how is the medical market going, medical cannabis market going in Canada?
Well, I'll try to do it as briefly as possible and say pretty good. We've come a long way, but since the regulations kind of came out, we've kind of worked within them and slowly stretched them out to a decent regulation. And the shortest answer I would describe it as we're probably better than pretty much everywhere else, but still have a long way to go.
Okay, great. Carlos, how is everything going in Portugal?
Yeah, I mean, we have the regulation. I mean, the new regulations were released in 2018. I mean, it's illegal to grow medical cannabis since 1993, but with the big industry, in fact, from the international companies, especially from Canada, that they would like to come to Europe, our authorities started looking for how they can help those companies to build and license their activities there in Portugal. So a new regulation was released in 2018, which helps a lot in terms of how we can do it. It was more clear. We know exactly what is the path that we can take. So I believe that in terms of getting the license or build your own project, it's more solid at the moment. What is it's not too clear for us in Portugal is the products that we have available on the pharmacies. I believe that is one of the main issues that we have at the moment in Portugal.
Okay, we will talk about products after. Great. Daniel, framework opened up in Switzerland last year. How is everything going?
Good question. I'm also going to try to be brief, but essentially the framework before it opened up last year was that you needed a special permit from the Federal Office of Public Health to be able to procure and get cannabis prescribed by a doctor in Switzerland. It was quite complicated from an administrative perspective process. So this changed last year. It's still complicated, but what changed is that cannabis was reclassified from a prohibited narcotic to a controlled substance. And now every doctor in Switzerland can freely prescribe medical cannabis, which was a huge step forward for the medical market. The problem is that doctors are faced with a lot of challenges. One of the challenges, for example, is that they don't know, the biggest challenge, they don't know much about medical cannabis, don't know how to prescribe it. There's a lot of administrative burdens that they're faced with. So it's going well, and there is an interest. However, there hasn't been mass adoption by doctors yet. But there is full therapeutic freedom for doctors to prescribe for whatever ailment they wish. But there's a lot of education that needs to happen. And so I would say we're a very big step forward, but we're far away from where we want to be.
You just start, at least you start in Switzerland, not like in Spain, that we are still waiting for a politician to take the first step. But
may I just ask you one thing? I mean, it's
good for you guys.
The doctor can prescribe for the first time, and there isn't any kind of ranking in terms of medicine they can do. They can prescribe.
In the past, there was a ranking. You basically had to be half dead and try everything else first before you got medical cannabis. And today, there's full therapeutic freedom, which means it's in the assessment of the doctor himself or herself to prescribe medical cannabis. However, they're also confronted with liability issues. So they still carry full liability, and I think that's one of the reasons they're actually very reluctant to prescribe cannabis. And also, in Switzerland, the market really is not on I'm already talking about the products, but you know, in Switzerland there is no real market for cannabis flower. So
it's the same in Portugal.
Yeah. So even, you know, thinking about flower and smokables, we're far away from that.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling that because in Portugal, I mean, there are some products available, but it's only, I mean, it's only possible to prescribe as a last resort, which doesn't make any sense. But it is what it is at the moment, and in terms of products, you have only 2 available, which is nothing compared to what we can get in other markets. But again, it's too short for the patients that are looking for this kind of product, and another thing that you said, and I completely agree with you, we need to have more studies or more knowledge for the medical community, so they can be more confident in prescribing this kind of products. This is something that all of us should push a little bit more to be on the field.
Okay. No,
can I add one more thing? Actually, I think it's very important to include associations. For example, there's the Swiss Society of Cannabis and Medicine in Switzerland that was mandated by the Federal Office of by the Health Ministry in Switzerland to basically put together therapeutic guidance or guidelines that doctors can take and see for which indication, which medication setup would make sense and which dosage and so on. So that's something that I would really try to encourage in countries where it's only just starting. It's the same as in Switzerland now, in its infancy.
I agree.
Okay, thank you guys. Santiago, can you tell us which requirements patients need in United States to become a patient?
Yeah, so in the US we have more than 30 micro industries, right? It's not legal at the federal level yet. It remains a Schedule I substance. So every state has its own regulations. The medical industry, I would use a different term. I would use therapeutic, right? Because it is very different from your typical medical industry. You don't go to the same doctor, you don't go to the same pharmacy, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing that you need in order to become a patient is to be under the correct ailment. So usually when a market opens up in the United States, it'll be similar, right? You gotta be half dead in order to get a medical license. But then as soon as they become more comfortable with the market, they add something like chronic pain to the list of ailments, which significantly opens up this therapeutic market. It's almost a way to test the recreational market, still making people go to doctors, which the doctors prescribing are usually doctors that were retired and come out of retirement in order to charge $100 per prescription that they write. So it's fairly easy to get a medical license in the States. The incentive to be a medical patient is really just where there's no recreational industry, right? Other than that, when both industries are available or alive, then really the only incentive to be a patient is to pay less taxes. But that's a little bit of the U.S. industry.
Good, and I would like to know about Canada because...
Yeah, just real quick on Canada, I wanted to point out that when we started, it was also a last case resort. You have to show you've tried like everything else, but we found a way around it. And one thing I always try and tell people who are building international markets is work with the crappy rules you're given, no matter how crappy they are, because we started really crappy and we've kind of expanded it to now it can be a first line of treatment and to things like pain, which is a little more subjective rather than measured. So I would really implore people to kind of work with it, even no matter how bad it is, because we've been there before.
Let us know, Alex, also about which kind of products patients can get in Canada.
Yeah, like when it started, it was only dry flower, and I have a close friend of mine whose daughter has a rare form of epilepsy, and he was converting his flower into oil, and that was actually against the law, and he could have been going to jail and had his kid taken away. It's crazy to think about it now. That seems like a lifetime ago, but it was only flour. We've come a long way. Now we had oils. Now we have edibles. We have all kinds of extracts. I mean, we have limitations on it, which we can get into a little bit later when we talk about that. But we have a lot of the products now, and it's come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. And I'm interested to hear about the kind of Portugal and Swiss. I know Switzerland is really CBD only from what I'm hearing, but yeah, every country kind of starts very similar and then just explodes in their own way. So I'd love to hear some other people.
Yeah, for now, for example, in Portugal, you only have available Sativx and the flowers from Tilray, and that's it. I mean, I know that there are a lot of companies that are trying to license and get a special authorization for their products, but that kind of process will take at least 1 to 2 years to get it done, which is a lot of time for an investor to wait. Yeah, and especially because, I mean, Portugal is a small country, so perhaps there is no kind of advantage of looking for our market to license and take so much time to do it. But at the same time, it could be something that then you can expand for the rest of the European countries.
Right. That's the advantage. You have to wait for you.
Yeah, I mean, you can start in Portugal and then you can try to adapt the same authorization for the other countries. But anyway, it will take you a lot of time, and I believe that's why it is taking so much to get new products in our market.
Yeah, so Switzerland is not just a CBD market, but it's really well known for being, for the consumer market. It's a big CBD hub, CBD producer of oils and so on. However, on the medical sphere, there's also CBD that is actually prescribed by form of magisterial preparation in certain, there's not many pharmacies that do it, but a few, CBD, and obviously THC now as well. And we're talking mostly full spectrum. In Switzerland, there's only 2 fully licensed drugs, which is Epidiolex and Sativex. In most cases, they're used off-label. However, these and also not necessarily and always reimbursed by the health insurance. It's another subject that we can touch upon. But basically, most cannabis in Switzerland is prescribed now with THC, I would say, and by way of magisterial preparation, which the pharmacies have to be involved. Same as Germany.
And then the U.S. is all over the place.
The U.S. is great, yeah. I mean, if we're talking medical products that have gone through clinical trials and have FDA approved, then we're talking the Sativex and Epidiolex. I personally have never seen those products, and if I never see them in my life, I would be totally fine. The medical industry, which again I would name therapeutic, has any type of product under the sun, right? A lot of the innovation comes from there. So you have also being micro industries, you have states that allow everything. Then you have other states that because of the medical argument, they wouldn't allow flower. And then the next step is to allow flower, but not smokable, only vaporized. So those states might not allow pre-roll sales, for example. They will sell you flower, but technically you cannot roll it and smoke it. You need to vaporize it.
I'm just curious because you said before that cannabis doctors basically are specialized doctors in cannabis. Would they also prescribe other medication if you have a, I'm just thinking about a neuropathic pain patient, for example, that has a mix of maybe 3-4 various medications that the person needs to take?
I would say specialized is a loose term. These are just doctors that are coming out of retirement so that they can make a few $100s a day. So they're as specialized as they need to be in order to...
And they will only prescribe cannabis then?
They don't prescribe cannabis. They allow you to get a license that allows you to enter a medical...
Yeah, we say they authorize the use of cannabis because cannabis doesn't have a drug identification number, so it can't be prescribed. So we say they authorize the use. And quickly, just to point out, why are all the retired doctors doing it? Because I was also wondering, why are all these old doctors doing it? The reason is they're not scared of losing their license. They don't care. So it's these young guys that are like, oh, I don't want the stigma and I don't want people to know me as a cannabis doctor. And these old guys are like, whatever, I'll just cover my beers at the golf course, and they just go and do it. But hey, that's how the industry started.
It's a good point, Alex, and it's crazy to think that a doctor can lose the license in a regular market, But
in the U.S., it's still a Scheduled I substance, so it's still federally illegal.
Yeah. Okay.
We've had a lot, just to point out, we had a lot of threats of doctors losing their license, but I can tell you in Canada, no one ended up losing their license. No matter how much investigations and everything, and everyone was so scared, it never happened. So, it's more just threats.
And another important issue, guys, what about insurance or social security? Does the insurance cover the medical cannabis?
I'll start because I kind of made a career out of this insurance thing. I helped a lot of military veterans help with cannabis, and I'm very proud of it, and it helped with a lot of conditions of PTSD and removed a lot of their other medications. I mean, that's a whole long story, but it made a lot of money for the company I was a part of, and then people right away were like, oh, you're just doing it for the money, and some of us were only doing it for the money, to be honest, but I actually always really cared about the veterans. I knew them all by name, and I know how much it helped them, and it changed their lives. So military veterans were getting coverage. Now we're starting to see some police people get coverage. Private insurance is covering up to $2,000 with healthcare spending accounts, which you can use for like massages and other things. So we're starting to see a big move in that, and that's going to be a big game changer. When we talk about medical versus rec a little later, I'll kind of explain a little more, but I mean, we're all waiting for the insurance train to come along. It's almost arrived, but it's going to come, like for example, Germany has pharmacare already, so insurance is going to be a real big push of medical cannabis market internationally, eventually, with more research, of course.
What about Portugal, Carlos?
Well, as a matter of fact, I mean, we don't have any or too much experience in with the product itself. So I don't know any kind of insurance company, for example, a private insurance company that can help the patients in this matter. I know that our health authority can co-fund this kind of products, but until now there is no support in this. In this kind of products, unfortunately.
Yeah, just before I come to Switzerland, I have a question for you, Alex, because you mentioned it depends what kind of basically patient population you come from. Is it more the patient population that matters, whether you're in the police force or whether you're a veteran, rather than your personal...
So what happened, good question. It all started with post-traumatic stress disorder. The veterans, it showed how much it helped, and now others were like, wait a minute, we have PTSD. So RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they're a certain type of police, so they're now trying it. And again, the results are so amazing. There's something called polypharma, where you take 12 medications to help with like 2 conditions. Cannabis replaces that, and we watched that happen. So I think what's happening is once people are seeing it, we're starting to see more insurance coverage, and that's the importance of like research and education, because once people see it, they see actually it could be very beneficial and save them money, because they're all about making money, insurance companies, and that's okay. We have to show them that cannabis can actually be cost effective for them and get people back to work faster.
It's similar in Switzerland, where we see that medical cannabis can replace one of the pitches basically of the industry to say there's a possibility with medical cannabis to replace other medication in a multi-medication setup. And that's the economic background that needs to be shown and evidenced. But in terms of health insurance, it's very important also to show the individual patient journey and to document that journey with strong data. And the better you can underwrite that data and send your special, because the basis is it's not reimbursed. That's where it starts. So you need to convince your health insurance on an individual basis that it is actually helping the patient with health and that it's also economical.
Yes, please do collect the data. That's so important. We weren't really doing that much.
Yeah.
I think that could be a really good start, because the data speaks for itself. You can't argue with the data.
Exactly, and we've been doing that with a client of mine in one specific case, and it's been working really well, and we wrote down all the data and so on, and the patient got reimbursement. There's also a patients association that helps with the processes, which is very important as well, but we're getting there. And the insurances are opening up. They realize that this could have economic value for them as well.
Thank you, Daniel. What about you?
For the US, the quick answer is no. They don't cover it.
I knew that. I knew that. Okay, thank you. Alex, I would like to ask you, how do the recreational and medical markets coexist,
Yes.
and how was the transaction?
Yeah, so this is a question I get asked a lot, you know, when I'm in Germany, and even here, people are saying, like, what happens when you go from medical to recreational? And I'll try to kind of give you a very brief answer to this, is that it was very tricky. A lot of people who were pretending they were medical quickly took off their medical hat, burned it, and just put on the rec hat, and you were like, yippee, let's go make millions. It didn't work out that way, but you realize what people's kind of intentions are very quickly. And like there's a few kind of examples, like for example, like milligrams of THC for medical is the same as with recreational. Like it's still the same 10 milligrams for edibles as an example. And the way things are sold, that's another big difference. Like with medical, we were selling it directly to patients from licensed producers. Now with recreational, we sell it directly to the government. So for example, with my edibles company, Loosh, what we do is we sell it to the government, and then the government sells it to the recreational stores. On the medical side, we can sell directly, like for example, with my pharmacy, Hybrid Farm, we sell directly to Hybrid Farm. So medical does have a lot of advantages, but we need to educate people on it. Like you can get reimbursed on your taxes by doing medical. So there's a few things like that, but we believe with insurance coverage, with increase of milligrams of THC for edibles as an example, there's just a few things that we're waiting for, like taxes. We're taxed equally for medical and recreational. But if something is a medicine in Canada, there are no taxes on medicine. So it feels very weird to say all medical is not taxed, all medicine is not taxed except cannabis. So these are some of the kind of growing pains that we're going through from that transition, but it's still great, and really like Germany and all these other countries that are doing this transition, I think can learn from it, and it's very exciting to kind of see. And now medical is going to slowly pick up again, and rec is going to plateau off, and hopefully we'll have a good market. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. What about United States, Santiago?
In the U.S., I think it's very similar to Canada, since again, it's not a medical market, so you don't have to take any products through clinical trials. The standard of quality for rec and med is very similar. I'll talk about Colorado as an example. So there's some states that, like, it's hard to understand the difference, right? No difference in milligram percentage, no difference in traceability. In Colorado, they decided to separate medical and recreational at the seed, which makes business logistics a little complex, but you have to decide when you plant that seed or take the clone if it's going to be medical throughout its whole journey and only be sold in a medical dispensary, or if it's going to be recreational, even though the product could be exactly the same. In Colorado, there is a difference between milligram. For example, an edible on the medical side can be up to 500 milligrams, whereas on the recreational side, it could only be up to 100. And taxes are different as well. Medical does get taxed, but it's important. A little lower than the recreational.
Yeah, and that's really important. You know, one thing that was driving us crazy is that you can buy a bottle of oil that has 1,000 milligrams and just chug it down. But we make like a lozenge that has 10 milligrams, and the government's really scared about how many pieces. But I said, wait a minute, you have 1,000 milligram oil you can chug. You have to eat, 100 of these lozenges to have the same amount. Think about how much work that is, and you're worried about protecting. So, I think one thing that's, if you've been here all day, you've heard about Spain and all the different countries, the government, they make rules that don't make sense, and that's normal. You're not going to get away from it, but we almost have to work with their stupid rules and slowly let them figure it out themselves, that what the right answer is. Banging your head against the wall and spending money on lobbying could be helpful, but ultimately, the only way they're going to change is by seeing that the sky is not falling. That's kind of what happened when rec happened. People are like, oh, now everyone's going to get high. When medical happened, oh, now everyone's going to get high. And they realized the same people who were getting high before are still getting high, and the people that weren't before are still not that interested. So, that's kind of what happens.
And Carlos and Daniel, can you tell us requirements to get a medical license?
Yeah, I mean, it's in fact our regulations are really solid. I mean, we know exactly what we can do in order to achieve the license. I mean, you need to comply with the GACP or the GMP, I mean, depending on what you want to grow or to manufacture. Getting the security done. I mean, traceability also is really, really important. I mean, the health authority is looking for traceability, quality of the product, and making sure that you are not doing it for the black market, for example. So I would say that the security, the quality, and the traceability are the key factors to get the license. Obviously, you need to have a really strong team. The knowledge of what you are doing next, because otherwise you will just be there and your project will be on hold for eternity. For example, it happens It is happening actually at the moment. Some companies are trying to figure out how they will move forward with their project. But yeah, in terms of requirements, it's quite simple. But yeah, anyway, it takes a lot of time again to do everything, because even if you have a project and a business plan, you know exactly what you are doing. You need to go. I mean, you need to build all the project, all the facilities, getting the people there, working really hard on the SOPs to comply with the GACP or the GMP. And only after that you get the license and you can start growing and you can start selling. So I would say that the business plan is really important, because you'll spend a lot of money in the meantime and you don't have any kind of revenue. But in terms of from the requirements itself, it's quite understandable and achievable.
And like in Spain, you need to have the product sold already.
Yeah,
sold.
that's also yeah. I mean, you need to have someone from the medical market. I mean, they need to be already licensed. You have someone that it intends to buy your product. I mean, it's not a binding contract, but again, you need to have someone that it is interesting in buying your product as well.
Yeah, okay. Actually, the same as in Colombia. Colombia also made a similar rule, which we won't get into here, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. People can't buy a product 8 months in advance when they need to buy it today. They don't know what the price is going to be in 8 months.
Exactly.
So, you know, unfortunately, sometimes people make rules that they don't actually intend on working, and we have to always be very careful of that.
This is at least in Portugal is a pharmaceutical market, you know. So they want to. What we try to tell is they want papers, you know. They want the SOPs, all the non-binding contracts, all the contracts with a lot of the people that are working on their facilities. So they like papers.
Yeah, it's just roadblocks. And not to get all conspiracy theory here, but like, for example, in Germany, the pharmaceutical industry has a seat at the table in cannabis legalization. So when you put someone at the table that has a vested interest in your lack of success, it creates a lot of problems. So whenever people wonder, like, wait, why are they making these rules? These are stupid. It's not going to work. It's because usually they're made by people that don't want them to work. And we have to understand it and work with it, not just say, and sue and get pissed off. And just say, okay, we're going to make it work and slowly change it the other way.
Exactly, yeah.
What about Switzerland?
Basically the same.
It's the same, no?
Okay, but they introduced a new system which is like 2-tiered, so you have to get a general license to be able to produce and cultivate cannabis, and then a single cultivation license on top of that for each grow, which makes it a bit more complicated, but it's actually a good system. And then you can transfer and sell that to another company that also has a license to handle narcotic drugs. And from there you can actually start do distribution. You need an extra license to export. And this is maybe where an interesting thing happens, is where the various terms of what medical cannabis means in Switzerland and in nearby countries diverge. So in Switzerland, the production of medical cannabis has to be under GACP rules, at least the flower. But the interesting part is that the drying then, and the drying part is considered a GMP step.
Oh, okay.
And in some other countries, the drying process is not considered GMP. So, but essentially, I would say, if you want to be a serious player in this market, you need to have a GMP set up. You need to be able to dry your product. You can outsource that step, and then from there on, you can go into distribution. That's one of the things, by the way, that changed in this legislation last year, is that Switzerland now, or Swiss producers can now export medical cannabis.
Okay, which I would like to know.
Just one thing. So yeah, in Portugal, for example, you can be GACP certified and you can do all the process from seed to sell. So we don't need to be GMP certified to try the flower. But obviously, I mean, if you want to, you can do that. Although it will take you an extra time, an extra license. So normally the companies will start with the GACP, and in 1-2 years they move forward with the GMP. But it's hard to get it.
And what about the final products you can produce in Portugal? Flower extractions?
I mean, in Portugal you can do, I would say, whatever you want, with independently of the level of THC. or even CBD. It's a matter of telling the authorities what you are growing or manufacturing, and after that they will grant you the license.
Okay, good. And for Alex and Santiago, because regulations in Canada and US they've been going on for a long time, what would you change in the law? There is something you would...
Yeah, so I'm going to go before Alex because I think he'll speak longer than me. But in the U.S., I think the majority of people don't or didn't know what GACP or GMP meant because they didn't need to, right? It's different across states. In Florida, they gave out 7 licenses to begin, so you needed like 30 years of agricultural land, 50 million escrow in the bank in order to get a license. Obviously, it's only a few people can play in a state like that. In Oklahoma, you needed $2,000 in a dream, and anybody could get a cannabis license. And the products you can produce are pretty much any products. So in the U.S., it's definitely an interesting mix of dynamics. And what I would change, to your point, is probably raise the level of professionalism in the medical industry without completely killing it the way that other countries are doing, right? But we definitely need to at least be under GACP and GMP standards if we're going to call the industry a medical industry. So I would at least want a little more differentiation between recreational and medical. Now, I'm grateful for the way things happened because it opened up the market significantly for good and bad, mostly good.
Can I chip in here as well? I think in Switzerland also there's going to be some differentiation in terms of products because you've been asking before about the legalized market, and so we're also doing that in Switzerland. We're in a process of legalizing non-medical adult use.
Yeah, I was going to ask
and so that's going to happen, but I think one of the differentiators will probably be that cannabis flower for smoking and also for vaporization will probably be more prevalent in the recreational, non-medical markets.
That makes sense.
And other products like oils, tinctures, capsules and all other forms, maybe even edibles at some stage, they will be reserved for the medical market.
Yeah, as it should be. And just quickly on that, 85% of all our products at the pharmacy are sold are not flour, and I'm so happy to hear that. It took a long time. So super fast, rapid fire. I had to make a quick note on it because honestly I can think of 1,000 things that I would change, but just super quickly, dangers of the wrong investor. You talk about how expensive this is. If you find the wrong investor, you're screwed. You find an investor who wants their money ASAP or pretends we're going to give you time, but then as soon as they invest, they start whipping you, that's going to kill you. So one thing I would change is maybe better access to the funding for this because that's very important, or finding ways to make it less expensive to do. Also, the challenge is the illicit market and the government. I think a lot of times people are looking at competition. There is no competition. When you're building a market, you need to actually be friends with the competitors and build this together because your competitors are really the old way of doing things and also the government. So working together and making the pie and then cutting it up. So I know we don't have too much more time, but changing a perception is really important. 75% of people are buying legal cannabis now. It used to be 35% in 2018. So we've come a long way, and that's also going to help change. So hopefully we left some time for questions from the audience.
Really good point, Alex. We're going.
Okay, we have some time for questions.
Oh, what? Okay, yes. Yeah, of course, yes, okay.
There's somebody in the back. She's got her hand. She's been waving her hand for like 5 minutes. So
you always got to leave time for questions for these fine people to see what we can tell them. And we're available after also and at the after party, but probably talk to us early at the after party for best answers.
Yeah, if you have any questions, go to Alex. Yeah, I'm joking. I'm around as well.
Hi, I'm Laura. I come from United States. I just moved to Spain this past September. I was an acupuncturist, and I work with people with cancer for the last 10 years. A lot of my people did the RSO oil protocol. They decided not to do the chemotherapy, and some of these people are still well and alive. So I can't wait until there is enough research to realize that we have a medicine to stop cancer. So where are you guys with the data the people? Is this been talked about with the chemotherapy companies? Where are we with all of this? Thank you.
I'll start with a real quick answer on this. In general, I never talk about curing cancer with cannabis because obviously there's not enough research, but we help a lot of side effects of treatment and symptom management and like dealing with like sleep, pain, things of the treatment. So that's the first thing. There's a Dr. Sanchez out of Madrid that has done some unbelievable research about cancer cells committing suicide with cannabinoids, but again, super preliminary, and the problem is we can't build a business or an industry of cannabis with stories like this because right away the doctors are like, so I never talked about curing anything. It got us to this point. I'm super excited to hope that this is going to be something, but it's... Yeah. No, it could be very useful. And RSO, shout out to Rick Simpson, Canadian, who, that's named after him, who's still survived. They told him he only had a few months left to live, and he's still alive, and they named an oil after him. So there's obviously something very special there, and we need to talk about it, but we don't lead with it. If we lead with it, right away people are like, this is all snake oil. I don't know if snake oil means anything to anyone here. Is that a European thing too, or no? Is that just us? So anyways, so just people think it's bullshit.
I would comment real quick. I think unfortunately the United States is not the right industry to collect that type of data because they're too far gone in their therapeutic, quasi-recreational medical industry. So they don't have the incentives really to need to collect this data and do these studies. But they do have enough people consuming and enough similar stories like this where if the data were to be collected, it could be completely world-changing. But I hope that other countries that are still trying to push these regulations forward do put these studies and this data first in order to change that stigma quicker.
Yeah, I'm half Israeli, so I'm a bit biased here, but I would also recommend to check out some of the research of Dedi Meiri, Professor Dedi Meiri at University of Haifa. Maybe there's a few others as well, but I know there's been, for example, he's been talking about a study that he made for colon cancer and where the use of certain strains led to a retraction of metastases in the body and stuff like that. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories, but obviously, and I agree fully with what Alex said, that's not how the industry should position itself. Now there's so much research that needs to be done.
There's lower hanging fruit with things we know for sure, like chronic pain, like sleep, like nausea,
exactly.
like increase of appetite. These are like for sure easy ones, and the doctors are behind it. So that's why. But Laura, happy to talk to you after. I have some more thoughts on it, and come find me for sure.
Also from personal experience with friends of mine who have been through chemotherapy and have used cannabis extensively, and it really helped them during that time.
Fantastic. We have another one over here.
Hello, I have a question for Daniel, but also for all the panel. I would like to know, specifically for Switzerland, but I can see that Germany also is taking the same direction. Why, for the medical market, the government allows importation of products from outside, from cannabis, but for the recreational not? I mean, the testing that is done in the recreational is only local production. Germany, when they draw the first proposal of the law, it seems to go in that direction. Why is that? I mean, because it should be the opposite, because the recreational consumers would like to have some variety.
Yeah, I can answer that pretty quickly. In Switzerland, recreational cannabis, or I would say non-medical adult use cannabis, as I've been taught, is not legal yet. So in the context of scientific studies, there are now pilot studies that were opened up. There's the first trials in Basel where cannabis, rec cannabis is being dispensed in pharmacies. Essentially, there's a substitute, there's a clause in that ordinance that says if not enough production can be procured locally to satisfy those trials in the context of a scientific study, then you can resort to importation. And we're not there yet because Switzerland obviously is in a position and has enough companies that can procure relatively low levels and low amounts of cannabis. And in the medical space, obviously, it's an open market because it's medical. And we also have the international legal frameworks to facilitate these cross-border movements of medical cannabis.
And also, just really quick, the answer is very simple for you, and we can talk after a longer version, but the answer is business, and they're protecting their business. I come from a country where we're protecting our business right now. We don't allow for importation of cannabis, and a lot of people are pretty upset that Canada's exporting, but we're not allowing for import. We're protecting our industries, which people spent hundreds of millions of dollars on, and many investors already lost so much money. So it's a way of protecting the industry, and the German tender hasn't even come out yet. There's rumors of this. We'll see what happens, but you know what? Whatever they do, we'll start there. Germany's capable of producing all the varieties you've ever dreamed of at the best qualities. Maybe a little more expensive because they have a higher cost there, but everything is possible. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Yeah. That's for sure.
I can just chip in one more thought. As a previous commodities trader, I'm actually very much a proponent of cross-border trade. I'm not a big fan of protectionism. I don't think it's something that will last for a long time, but in these industries, I really think that you have to brace yourself for a period, at least a period, of some form, mixed or full protectionism when the markets open up. And in Germany, it seems to go in the same direction.
I would like to say, as an enjoyer of Moroccan hash and Spanish wine, I would also like to see global, you know what I mean, right?
We'll
I like
get there.
African sativas, I like Moroccan hash, I like California weed. You understand where I'm
Well, that's why we're here.
I can't wait to go to the store in California and buy a Tempranillo and some Moroccan. It would be great. We're out of time. Let's hear it again for our panel, Guillermo, everybody. Thank you so much. And I'm sure if you have more questions, you can talk to them outside the hall.